Hey you guys, welcome back. Channel review anything and everything. And I just wanted to show you guys something, a quick update. There goes the main male fish right there. So before, the water used to be a little bit cloudy in the water, and what I found out was from speaking with one of the guys at the pet store, and they were telling me that that's probably that there's algae, not on the surface of the tank. They told them I would scrub it off with a toothbrush, but the algae was in the water. Okay, I get that. Started turning on the lights a little bit less. But one thing I mentioned before in the previous video after getting the heater, how everything looked like, I forget the words I used exactly, but it was almost like I said something like, I don't want to say like a decaying, but it was almost like things were becoming more lively, almost like I think the food was starting to, like if I put food in there and maybe the fish didn't eat it, it looked like it, before it would just float in and drift to the bottom, no big deal. It's almost like the heating of the water made things start decomposing faster, that, the plants was decomposing faster, pieces of dead plant maybe, that if they fell off of one of the other plants, because sometimes I used to rip some of the plants just to kind of break them down because they were too long, or I haven't done that in a long time, but I'm just kind of making note that anything, if there was some dying plant inside, pieces of leaves of plants, it would usually stay intact for a long time, probably because the water was colder. And I didn't realize the water was so cold until I moved over some plants. And I recently made a video about how I was saying that the water was colder, which is why I bought the heater. Now it feels like not only is food particles decomposing faster, the plants are decomposing faster, I guess, because now the water's not cold. Even though it was room temperature, it still felt cold. Fast forward, I guess what I was trying to say is that motion, that what I was seeing, that decomposing, now I'm starting to see, as you could see here, there's this growth happening. And I know it's got to be directly related to the hotter water, because the warmer water, because that was never the case before. But in addition, as I'm looking at this stuff scattered around, it's not just decomposing of stuff. These little strands here, and I'll try to zoom in closer, that maybe you guys could see. If you look closely, you see them moving. These are living. These things are some kind of worms or some kind of thing. I don't know what it is. And I do hope that the snails that I've been putting in are going to be able to go to work on it. But it's actually, and I don't know if the betta fish are going to try to eat it either, but they're moving around. And these were not there before, even when I had the algae. But before the heater, these weren't there. So the heat is creating an environment. I just unplugged the heat just a moment ago. The heat is creating an environment where, I don't know if you want to call this, for lack of a better word, bacteria, but it's able to grow, it's able to breed where it wasn't able to when the water was colder. Now, like I said, my initial that same betta fish that you just saw, the males, the only male in there, were surviving when the temperature was cold. But now what ended up happening is that the other day, before I had the heater, I had bought a female betta to put in there with him. I never saw that female betta anymore in the tank. I'm assuming that she probably died because it was cold. That's what my assumption is, based on the fact that after putting my hands in the water a couple days after I put that fish in, the female, like I said, I put my hands in the water because I was transferring these right here. These are the jungle valve plants, and I was transferring them in because I have a whole bunch of them all in the other tank with none of the sword plants. I always say inside these videos, I call it sword for short because I can't pronounce the rest of it. At least it's not in front of me without reading it. Sword, echidna, something, some type of plant like that. But anyway, I call them sword plants. Those are the long ones that are like these with the big leaves. So the other tank doesn't have none of those, but this one used to have the jungle valve. The jungle valve died because the sword plant sprouted out at the top, almost like a mushroom type, where dispersed at the top, and it blocked the light. So now, moving certain things around, there's some spaces, open spaces, where I was able to put them in. Long story short, my point is, I put my hands inside the water. I realized it was cold. I realized to myself, that's probably why the female that I recently bought died. So fast forward, you guys just seen a video, I put 2 females in there now after having the heater. Those 2 females are still alive. So I'm going to assume that they had no problem acclimating to the water because the water is warm. But this same warmer water has already started this process of making this stuff form. I don't know what this is. If you guys know, post it down in the comments down below. Try to do some research to find out what this is. I'm going to assume that it is something that's happening along with the fact that when I do my feedings, granted, I think I may have been overfeeding at some point, and like I said, that wasn't as much of a problem when the water was cold. I think now that the water's warm, it's making that food break down with bacteria, is able to live inside the water easier because the water is now warm. And yeah, so there's all of this around. There's some of it also growing on other parts of the tank too. I'm just showing you this portion right now, but it's growing elsewhere as well. This one you get a good view of it because of the light that I have right over here, and there's not really a lot of plants coming over on this side. And yeah, so if you know, like I said, if you guys know, but at this point now, my tank, trying to fix one problem, other problems are being created. Like I said, I've been putting the lights on a lot less, maybe about 4 hours a day, maybe 5 hours a day, as opposed to before I'd have the lights just running for like 16 hours because this tank doesn't get hardly any natural sunlight without these lights. And I want the plants to live because obviously the plants are going to take care of the recycling process inside the tank. But this is one of the first times where I'm dealing with the tank taking on a life of its own to some degree and doing what it's doing. What I'm going to do right now, excuse the sound, I'm going to plug in my air pump. If you guys are picking that up on the mic, I apologize for that, but that will just help some of the water like cycle a little bit. But I don't have a filter system going on. I really don't want a filter system going on. So this right here is just simply to push the water around. That's why I had put this inside there. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. This stuff looks so crazy to me of how crazy this stuff is. And you, like I said, you could see them move. Like sometime at first it just looks like it's almost like more type of algae-ish type of things, but then when you see it moving, you realize no, this is not plant life. This is some kind of, and I don't even think it's worms, to be honest with you. I think it's more like a fungus, because the way they're tied together, like it looks like some kind of fungus is growing, if you ask me. So I don't know. I wonder if things will eat it. But when you look close, I see some of them that are detached from the side of the tank, and they're in the water just free floating, and you see them moving around like they're actually moving. But there's so much of this that I really do hope that the snails are going to eat these. And I do have more snails that are growing in the other tank, the 10-gallon next to it. If I in the past have called that a 5-gallon in recent videos, I'm sorry, I'm so used to it being a 5-gallon that I forget that it's now the 10-gallon in that place because the 5-gallon broke. That one doesn't have none of this kind of stuff, and I put the fish food in it, but I don't have a heater in that one. And so I have a good collection of snails in there that I bring over to this tank. Here, I just decided to move our view a little bit. The snails that I brought over from that tank, you're seeing both tanks right now, a little bit of both tanks. The one on the right is the 10-gallon. I brought a lot of the snails from there over to this one, and they're actually doing very good. They're growing very fast, and I think the heat has made them a lot more active than the ones that are inside the 10-gallon tank. Then the left one is the 20-gallon tank. The main tank's 20-gallon tank. They're a lot more active in the 20-gallon tank now because it's the temperature is warmer, and I really think that that's making it a lot more you know, they're able to be a lot more active. And in the 10-gallon tank, they're a lot more slow moving because it's colder. It's room temperature. In our minds, we think that it's warm, but it's really not. And it's funny, I was actually looking at a video of that after the fact, now after experiencing this, and it was saying about how we think that room temperature is fine for the fish, but technically it's kind of cold. And like I said, they'll survive. That's why I bought the heater. My point is that the 10-gallon, the snails move slow, but they're consistent. In the 10-gallon, they have, some of them have bad shells too. So I don't know what's going on with them, but they're still alive and they're thriving, even though, and they gave birth to a bunch more snails, even though there's something in that water. I don't know whether it's lack of certain nutrients. We have the plants, but we only have the one type of plant inside there. I don't know what it is. I put the food in there as well too. I feed them the flakes because I just have a bunch of that. Some of the bigger ones, their shells have been kind of unhealthy for a long period of time, but they're still living. So I don't know, but that water is clear. Sometimes you get a little bit of algae on the sides, and here you can see one of the new females there. The algae will get on the sides, and you know, I can scrub it with a toothbrush, but for the most part the water is clear. The 20-gallon tank, the water is not clear. It's getting very fuzzy. I'm gonna probably have to not have the heater on here for a while, but now that the two females are in here and have been adapted, if the water starts to get colder, they would have already been in the water now for some time, so they'll acclimate with it if it gets colder. I really do think that the heat is, I've never seen this before until having the heat. There's been a little bit of algae in there, yes. That's one thing. That could be attributed to the light. But the that overgrowth of, we're gonna call it fungus, that I've never seen before, and it's crazy and it's out of control, and so I'm gonna probably have to keep the heat off because I could see that stuff spiraling. Like I said, if you guys, any comments down below, excuse me, that you guys might know or have dealt with this or know what this is, it is crazy to me right now. It is really crazy to me. I'm going to zoom in on this one to see if these are moving as well. I'm sure they are, because I'm sure it's the exact same thing as what's on the other side. Sometimes you got to look at a certain thing specifically real long to see that it's moving. Now I do have the water pumping, so that things floating in the background, but when you look on the actual glass, and I do see them moving. Sometimes you got to look clear. I'm looking off of the camera, so I don't know if you guys seeing it on the camera, but I'm looking off the camera up in this area and I'm seeing them move. So, all right, sorry guys, I had to take a little pause. Apparently a call was coming in, which threw everything off, and it wasn't even that important. One thing I'm also, just a little side note, I just seen when the female fish, I guess because they're being chased by the male, they were splashing. It looks like they almost are trying to jump out the top. Obviously I have the mesh top on this, but they're very active. It's definitely a tricky situation right now because, like I said before, I'm sorry you guys, I'm just ranting on the video, so if this is not for you, I get it. But for those who are just kind of, you know, here with me with the fish tank segments and the beta fish segments, don't mind that I'm ranting a little bit. But this is really, it's really kind of crazy just seeing this go on and not really knowing what to do with this. I'm gonna probably have to call my local pet store and see what's up. I'm gonna try to also do some research, see what I can find. I'm actually gonna give a shot to to the fact that apparently now, you know, you got these new AI programs like on Google where you can take a photo of something and then it's supposed to be able to look it up. I'm gonna see if I could do that as well, if it's gonna know what I'm looking at and be able to research this and tell me what it is. Let's put this AI to the test. But yeah. And then I don't even know how this is doing for the plants. Like, is this hurting the plants or not? You know, what's this going to do for the plants? Are those things going to eat away at the plants? I see some of them are sticking. Like, you look at the one right here and it's sticking right onto the leaf of the plant. Are these things eating up the plants? One of my big concerns is, are the snails going to eat them up? I really hope that they will. And I've got plenty of more baby snails that I'm going to have to fish out of the 10-gallon to bring over and let them go to work. I'm so glad that that has occurred, because once they had babies, I've had an abundant amount of snails now, and I'm glad. I've had them in the past, but not to the level that I have now. And I really almost feel that them being in that 10-gallon, because I had the ones in 10-gallon never gave birth before. The ones in 20-gallon did. And then some of them have died off, but the smaller ones didn't end up flourishing the way that they did in the 10-gallon. And I don't know why, but the ones in the 10-gallon, there's so many of them, and they're doing so great. They're still young, they're still small, but they're not growing as fast as when I put them in the 20-gallon. But I can use them to add to the 20-gallon. I'm glad. It's like farming. So hopefully they thrive, and I can keep just slowly moving them over and having them do their work on the 20-gallon. You can see that one over there. He's moving around. That snail right there. Very big in a short amount of time. So I'm really enjoying that. Yeah, you guys. So it's definitely a crucial moment, because the idea of this was supposed to be to have this male be able to breed with the female. And now I have no clue what's going on here with this tank. In addition, there was one of the females too now. They're both pretty small. In addition, move this light over a little bit. I wanted to stay over to give those other plants some extra life. I just threw it in there so you guys can see a little better for the time being. I'll move this closer to where the light is. I've also got at least one of the frogs still in there. I don't know if they're both in there. Tank is very cloudy at this point. I do want it to be able to naturally recover without having to do some kind of drainage of the water. I want it to naturally be able to go to a state of, it doesn't have to be the most clear, but healthy. I feel that the 10-gallon, you know, I'll turn over here so you guys can see that again, is so clean relative to that, so much more clear. And you know, it's definitely one of those things where, like I said, there's a little bit of green on the glass of the tank, but that's just can be scrubbed. It's not in the water. So the heat definitely played a role. So I'm gonna have to stop with the heat. That's just a given. I'm gonna have to stop with the heat and see what happens. Now we are getting into warmer days. Today, right now, as we speak, it was 70 today. The other day was like low 50s here. So once we get into the warmer spring, closer to the summer weather, the warm weather, I won't need to have a heater on necessarily. And granted, room temperature is still not to that level, but I've never had problems with them thriving before, like my betta fish. when it was the warmer times, they would actually breed, and that's what I'm really looking for. And they were active, but I'm probably thinking of the warmer season. And before, I used to actually always have the heat in the house pretty high. I recently started turning that down, so I'm sure that's affecting things as well. But having a heater in the water, I think, is something that I'm not gonna really be able to do right now. And I wouldn't even want to put that heater in the 10-gallon tank, because I really don't even want to disturb that balance, because it's always been clear. The water's always been clear. I never understood that, but that's another reason why, by putting the jungle valve inside the 20-gallon, I'm hoping that if that's the reason why the 10-gallon is so clear, is because of the jungle valve, because the 10-gallon is actually more in direct sunlight than 20-gallon is, even though I still have the lights on the 10-gallon just as long as I have it on the 20-gallon. I think that the type of plant that's in it, because the 20-gallon no longer had the jungle valve, just had the sword plants, I think that the jungle valve is probably a large contributor to managing the conditions in the water in some way, some capacity. I don't know how that would attribute to less algae, but maybe it's that the sword plants create more algae. I don't know what it is, but both should be under the same condition, and the 10-gallon never had to deal with that type of algae on it like that. A little bit on the glass, but never in the water. It wasn't cloudy in the water to where you couldn't see through one side of the tank to the other side of the tank. This has never been this cloudy before. Obviously, like I said, because of the heat, it's making it worse, but it's never been this cloudy before. So I really do want to see what's going on here and what's going to happen. So yeah. Anyway, you guys, I rambled on long enough, you guys, and like I said, put down in the comments below if you guys have a solution or if you guys have some advice, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.